What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and in this video I want to explain to you how surges, threats, and overcharged weapons work. With Grandmasters just around the corner, I figured this info could be useful to some folks. So before Lightfall, we had a simple system called burns. You would take 50% increased damage from one element source and deal 25% extra damage with that same element. Well, now the increased damage comes from a certain threat. So for this week, the Nightfall is the new Lake of Shadows and it has arc threat. This means you will take increased damage from arc attacks. Therefore, I would probably recommend resist mods of whatever element the threat is. So threats are simple enough. So let's look at the next thing. It seems that Bungie really wants us to play with Strand, as I am pretty sure there is a Strand surge for every single Nightfall and Lost Sector this season. The Strand surge states 25% bonus to outgoing Strand damage. This applies to all Strand damage, supers, abilities, Strand weapons, everything. For every activity, there are usually 2 surge modifiers to give you some build flexibility. These surges this season rotate between Void and Solar. So for the Nightfall this week, we have Void Surge. And once again, that applies to all supers, abilities, and weapons. So if you want to deal more damage and make the Nightfall easier on yourself, you best spec into Void or Strand subclasses and weapons, or you'll be putting yourself at a disadvantage. So now we get into overcharges. These come from a few sources, and I will go in depth on how they work. So first off, there's always an overcharged weapon type. A weapon that no matter what element you use, it will get a 25% buff. For this Nightfall, it is machine guns. So any machine gun will get 25% more damage. It doesn't matter if it is stasis, arc, or solar, even though those do not match a surge. You can see on screen I am shooting a 450 RPM adaptive frame solar machine gun, and it hits for the same damage as my Void adaptive machine gun. Something to note here as well is that the overcharge does not stack with the surge. You would think I may get a 25% bonus from Void Surge and a 25% bonus from machine gun overcharge, but that is not the case. They do not stack. So finally, we go to the most complicated of all the modifiers, and that is overcharged weapons. Don't worry, it really isn't all that complex, but this one has the most sources to modify the damage. So first of all, it states the weapon overcharges from the seasonal artifact are active in this activity. So what does that mean? Basically, if you are using any of the champion stunning artifact mods, so things like Unstoppable Scout Rifle, Anti-Barrier Pulse Rifle, or Overload Auto and SMG, then those weapons will benefit from a 25% increase in damage. So again, you could use a Solar Scout Rifle, and even though there is no Solar Surge, if you had Unstoppable Scout Rifle equipped, then it would get the bonus damage. And once again, these do not stack. You cannot double dip from Overload Auto Rifle and Strand Surge. It caps out at a 25% buff. So if we look at a Stasis Auto Rifle, with Overload, our damage is the same as the Strand Auto Rifle was. But without Overload, it has no Surge or Overcharge to take advantage of, so it is hitting for 25% less damage. The crits go from 773 damage to 619 damage per shot. This makes a big difference in high-end activities, especially on high-damaging weapons like specials and heavies. So again, you really want to take advantage of these activity modifiers. So now for the second part of the description on overcharged weapons. Kinetic weapons do increased damage when your subclass element matches an active surge. This is a really big deal. I made a video going fairly in depth on this if you want more info and examples of how big of a difference this can make, but for this video I will just give you the numbers. So in Lightfall, Bungie buffed kinetic primaries to deal 10% more damage than their stasis or strand counterparts, and kinetic specials deal a whopping 15% more. That is a big buff. So in the case of overcharges, as long as your subclass matches the surge, then your kinetic will hit for 25% more damage. And all you have to do to activate this increase in damage is match your subclass to the surge. So in this case, you would need to run a Void or Strand subclass, whereas Stasis doesn't get that luxury. You can run an artifact mod to overcharge a Stasis weapon, but you can't passively get the buff like kinetics can. And this makes a huge difference on something like Witherhoard or Izanagi's Burden especially. So just to recap, threats mean you take 25% more damage from a certain element. Surges are 25% more outgoing damage from any source, weapons, abilities, supers, etc. And then overcharges are 25% weapon damage bonuses that can come from the seasonal artifact mods, matching your subclass element to the activity's surge for kinetic weapons, or from the specific overcharged weapon type. And that is really all you need to know about threats, surges, and overcharge. I hope this video was helpful, and if it was, then a like would be greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your Conqueror seals. Take care.